Okay, so we're gonna be debunking a socialist video that says socialism is better than capitalism. I've watched this video a couple times. It has problems with it, so it's really rough. I wouldn't. Let's just get into it. I'm not me speaking. You guys want to hear the video? So give me a. There we go.
Provides a better quality of life. I've done a proper video about this before, but put simply, the vast majority of the time, socialism gave people a higher standard of living than capitalism, given equal levels of economic development. This is according to a paper by Saracetin and Waitskin that analyzed numerous factors relating to human quality of life relative to the level of economic development in each country presented. Within each level of economic development, socialist countries had infant mortality and child death rates approximately 2 to 3 times lower than the capitalist countries. Similar relationships emerged for life expectancy. Socialist countries consistently showed higher numbers of health professionals per population than capitalist countries at equivalent levels of economic development. The ratio of population per physician in a lower middle income and upper middle income socialist countries was similar to or even higher than that of high income capitalist countries. Socialist countries consistently showed equal or higher levels of enrollment in educational institutions. Not only that, but they provided high quality education facilities to the whole population, regardless of race, religion, gender, language, or ethnicity. To quote the article, even in the wealthier capitalist countries, public health and educational policies have not achieved equitable access for low income groups, racial minorities, and geographically isolated communities. In addition, socialist countries provided a higher daily per capita calorie supply as a percentage of requirement than did the capitalist countries at a similar level of development. Nutritional supply of all socialist countries exceeded the 100% requirement for healthy life and growth, unlike in the capitalist countries. So much for the communism no food meme. Put simply, in all three comparisons within given levels of development, socialist countries achieved much higher physical quality of life. Keep in mind, many of these countries achieved such staggering growth and development in the face of invasion, constant sabotage, economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and so much more from the US and its strategic allies. If you're interested in the details of the study, check out the original video,
All right,
or
dude.
the study itself, sources in the pinned comment as always.
All right, dude. All right, dude. Let's get into this goy slop. It is goy slop because fucking socialism was created by Marx, all Israel thing. It is goy slop. Besides the point. Let's get into it. All right. So pretty much, there's a problem with the study, and he kind of. I know why he glanced. I don't know if he knows. But let me see if I can find the study here. Let me see if this shows the study what countries they picked. Because I think they misread. They actually did. No, they did mess. Because the problem with the study was, and I recommend just searching up this video called by John Stotzel, I think his name is, and he just debunks the entire thing, right? So pretty much what the study is really bad. It was conducted really bad. So the problem is with this is that they called social democracies socialist. What's the problem with this? What is socialism? There's two definitions I usually go by, depending on what communist I'm talking to. So there is, well, socialism is the gateway to communism, or socialism is the means of production owned within the workers or the central government. In none of those countries, that was true. Either one. They weren't trying to get to communism, or the means of production was still not owned within the workers. So it wasn't even socialist. It was capitalist still. Or late stage capitalism, what they say. Late stage capitalism. Right? So pretty much, the study's already wrong. Then look at the capitalist countries they picked. They didn't pick the United States. They didn't pick any of the prospering capitalist countries. Wait, they picked countries like that were coming out of war, that were like the have worst capitalist countries. So you put social democracies. Imagine like, what's the right comparison here? Sweden versus Mexico. They're both capitalist, but Sweden is just doing better. They have less external factors. So the study's already wrong, right? You should do basic research. I don't know why you picked the study. But let's also just say this study's correct. It's an outlier study. We can't trust outlier studies. All right, if we look at every other study, now you can say, well, you believe in race realism. No study says it's not the greatest argument here, but let's just use it. Every other economic study shows that capitalism has prospered above socialist countries. That free of the market, free to people, which is true. Because a complete free market is an ANCAP country, which the people are the most free. That's just true. Right? So the free of the market, free of the people. Always. Right? And I'm not even advocating for a total free market. That's stupid. But I'm saying that, like, if you want prosperity for minorities, right? Black Americans are the richest black people in the world. Capitalist system, I mean, I don't even call us capitalists anymore. But if you look at the Western world, the black people, the minorities are richer than anywhere else in capitalist countries. If we look at how socialism has been tried, it's been horrible, right? I mean, millions of deaths. And but I was just talking about the study sucked. The study cherry picked, and the study didn't even is misrepresent what socialism is. Read the study, and also just watch the other side of this. If you're a socialist reading this and watching this video, you can have an openness to the other side, which makes no sense. The study was awful, right? So that's my rebuttal to that. It wasn't a good argument. Let's get to the second part. All right. So serving the interest of the majority. Yes.
Socialism serves the class interests of the largest group of society. The most fundamental thing to mention is that socialism isn't meant to appeal to everyone. It's only meant to appeal to the working class and associated classes that can be won over by common goals or diligent political work. When I say a goal of socialism is to reorganize workplaces along democratic principles, where all workers in the enterprise have a vote in what happens, rather than like in capitalist enterprises where only the shareholders and the board of directors have a say, no wonder those same shareholders and members of the board won't like what's being said. That's part of materialist analysis. Socialism aims to give the vast majority of people, that being the working class, political and economic power in society, something they lack on all fronts under capitalism. Unsurprisingly, that's attractive to the working class and completely despised by the ruling class. If you're interested in how this form of political and economic power was exercised by historic socialist examples, check out.
All right, dude. All right. Straw man of capitalism. Let's look at American capitalism. Majority of businesses are small businesses, right? Majority. 90%. So they're like the ruling class, and the big businesses are exploiting workers. How? How are they exploiting workers? I mean, dude, like when we talk about this, right? Socialist, right? The workers are getting exploited. That's what they mean. Like, the workers are getting exploited. How? Well, they're not getting what they labor. Okay, well, they didn't even do anything. In reality, just say you're making this phone, right? This phone, right? Well, you didn't get the exact pieces for this phone, did you? No! Wait! It sounds like the CEO, not the CEO, but the owner and the people funding the business gave you the materials to build the phone. And all you're doing it is building the phone itself. So, does it make sense that the people that are building and putting the money to buy the phone and all you're doing is building it, no cost on you? Makes sense? Does it make sense that he gets the majority of the share? I mean, it's like saying like pretty much it makes no sense. Also, there's the whole thing with the workers. That's another problem, right? I'm gonna get to that later, but it makes no sense. I think that the business owner deserves the majority of the profit, right? It deserves. If one, you agree to a wage. You agree to a wage. And a group of people agree to a wage, okay? So if this say the wages were $5 for, I don't know, like cashiering. It was $5 an hour, hypothetically, right? And say you have 50 cashiers. Well, all 50 of them agreed. And also, you have bargaining power in capitalism too. Workers have bargaining power. They can go to the owner of the business and ask for more wages, okay? Because here's the thing. If your resume is really good, other businesses go to and try to get you. If you are good at your job, they'll do that. And guess what? That gives you bargaining power. Oh, also, socialists are so pro mass immigration in this country. But I'm like, dude, you want more wages for workers and workers have more bargaining power? Well, you would be against mass immigration. So, it's not even that capitalism doesn't represent the workers. It does. Okay? If it's done correctly. If it's done correctly in a way, even then, even in United States capitalism, you still have bargaining, you still have raise of wages. So, it's not even a good argument. It's not. But yeah, I don't think his argument is well put together on that. I think it's not really represented. Now let's go into the democratic means. Okay, so naturally, when you're looking amongst workers, when they own the means of production, naturally, and I recommend Jordan Peterson's lecture on this. It was amazing, on the Communist Manifesto. If you just look, what happens usually? A group of people always are outliers, and they usually become leaders. So what happens then? When you get a group of leaders, can that become an oligarch? Usually it does, and there'd be no democratic means. So, I think that happened to the USSR. That's how the USSR became a dictatorship, right? So, it makes no sense, right? The democratic means makes no sense. It won't happen, okay? Or a group of people are dictating literally everything, and it's just another like, in a sense, like a capitalist, like what they don't want. And also the ruling class. Also, again, like you don't have to work for the ruling class. You are doing that, right? It's voluntarily. Makes no sense, right? Not a good argument. The workers are already represented in capitalism. He kind of just straw man. He said like every worker is going to the ruling class when the majority of businesses are small businesses. So you're actually having more bargaining power. Makes no sense, dude. These fucking socialists. There are no arguments.
My latest book recommendations video in the
All right, the rational allocation of resources. Oh, this could be fun. Maybe my mic.
Our second point is the rational allocation of resources and the economic plan. The Marxian conception of socialism isn't utopian. Hell, Engels wrote a book about that very idea, which I strongly recommend you read. We understand that excesses and irrational allocation can occur under all systems. As humans, human error can occur. The difference is, though, unlike under capitalism, where the allocation of resources is towards that which is most profitable, damned be the cost, be it human, environmental, or usually both. Under socialism, the allocation of resources is done according to need and rational economic planning, a point that will be touched on soon. This could even be done democratically in the form of electronic state referendums on budgeting and expenditures, something Paul Cockshott has developed in his writings and even discussed in Vietnam with relevant political groups in the country. I recommend you check out his work. This ties into the point prior of the working class holding political power. Under capitalism, it is heresy to say, let alone demand, everyone have a say in the budgeting of the capitalist state. If that happened, how would Lockheed Martin make their money contracting for useless wars Americans don't want? And how would Amazon and Apple get away with not only dodging all their taxes, but also getting richer off of your tax dollars? Adding on to this, socialism aims for the founding of economic planning institutions and forming long term economic plans for the development of the economy as well as society. Now, economic planning isn't something exclusive to socialism. South Korea and Japan used them under capitalist systems to much success in the few decades after World War II, and big business almost exclusively as a default plans their local economies. Walmart is a perfect example of this. The difference between that and modern socialist economic planning is twofold. Firstly, it's done not for the profits of a few, but for the improvement of society as a whole. And secondly, it is something that all of society has a say in through the relevant workplaces, enterprises, and working class organization committees, be they party cells or otherwise. Historic socialisms did this to varying lengths, and modern developments can only expand and improve the level of democratic participation in said planning. The author just mentioned, Paul Cockshott, has an excellent book on the topic titled Towards a New Socialism that I highly recommend you check out. A side note, a frequent objection to all of this is the idea of the economic calculation problem, that there are simply too many inputs, outputs, and interactions in the economy for planning commissions to handle. That may have been the case in 1950, when most calculations were still done by hand, but this is no longer the case in the 21st century. Your smartphone can plan complex multi-year plans for small economies. A decently fast computer can plan thorough plans for medium to large-sized economies, and modern supercomputers can plan astronomically convoluted plans for massive economies beyond human scope. Add on top of this fancy math that reduces the sheer quantity of work, and you have something truly amazing. Success was achieved with the very primitive computers of the 1970s in Chile with Project Cybersyn, where economic sabotage, directed by the CIA and its lackeys on the ground, attempted to cripple the country's economy, but intelligent planning kept it going with a fraction of the resources available. Check out Medina's book titled Cybernetic Revolutionaries for an interesting dive. This was 50 years ago. Imagine what could be done now.
Oh my gosh, that isn't even true, dude. Okay, this is correct. Okay, yeah. All right, let's talk about this. Economic planning, rational planning. They treat profit over human dignity. Okay, so here's the problem with this, right? You just be pro tariff, and you be pro regulation. It's not really arguing for socialism, right? It's not really. I don't think it's really arguing. This is arguing for socialism. I feel like this is arguing for pretty much, in my opinion, it's more just arguing for a high regulatory capitalist society. Like, none of his points really made sense to me in terms of like allocating resources. Well, here's the thing, right? When you make profit and loss, right, and a quarter goes up and they spend more, a quarter goes down, they spend less, right? You have, first of all, there's no businesses in socialism. This is the problem. You have a central planner, right? You have a central planner, and he's representable for America, hypothetically, right? Now let's think about this, right? Even if you have massive amounts of technology, what if you underbuy? Like, because they're assuming that the economy is always the same. Like, it changes quarter by quarter by quarter. Like, for example, apples won't sell at the exact same rate, so you might overbuy, or you might underbuy, right? But and if you underbuy, there's shortages. That's why, again, that is true, and he concedes the point that this has never worked. But even with technology, I don't think you'll be able to do it, because there's no how. Well, you go on AI and say, how much should I buy this quarter? Amongst, let's just say, New Jersey. There's 13 million people living in New Jersey. Like, or it might be less. That might be Pennsylvania. I think there's around 13 million people living in New Jersey. Something like that. It's like 8 million. So, okay, if 8 million people, you have to still predict how much these people are going to buy. Predicting is not, like, easy. All because you have a smartphone. And now he brings up Chile. Well, Chile was still going through shortages before this the CIA, which is even proven. It's even proven. You know what's happening in Chile? They were going to absolute shite. Okay? Because of socialism. There were still shortages. There was still, like, black markets, which you see in every socialist country. So, and even then, when capitalism got there, they made the country prosperous. And made the country better. By every single mark. So, that is even true. So, anyways, yeah. I can't wait for this humanity over profit part because this makes no sense. But, yeah, the allocation problem and the socialism is a real problem. And I haven't heard a coherent answer, especially from this one. So, yeah. Let's get to the next part. Can't wait for this.
Third point is humanity over profit. This is an overarching point with many subpoints. The first of which is production for use rather than profit. Under capitalism, exchange values are predominant. What this means is that production on a whole is done with the intention of sale on the market. Things are considered for sale before they're considered for the full capacity of their use. As a result of this, simple changes like transitioning to more eco friendly production of certain goods is unnecessarily tedious and requires a heavy hand from the capitalist state to get done, rather than simple shifting according to a coherent plan. Adding even further, capitalism has invented lovely concepts like planned obsolescence, where goods and products perfectly capable of functioning for many years have their lives artificially shortened so that they break or fail more often to force consumers to, well, consume more. Imagine the sheer waste of human labor, damage to the environment, and general misery such ridiculousness brings about, and all for what? To line the pockets of a few who are already wealthy enough to make the pharaohs gaze in envy? Under socialism, production is made for use and maintenance, so that human effort expended can be used to maximize improvements in society, rather than make stuff that intentionally breaks. Another related subpoint is that of environment over profits. Unsurprisingly, a system not predicated on profit would result in proper investment with people's health and the environment's sustainability in mind. Unless there's planned economy without competition driving production, the environment will be completely destroyed. You cannot have a sustainable environment when every decision on what you do for energy, what you build, what resources and chemicals you use are driven by the needs of private capitalist corporations. Unless the system is ended, there will be irreversible changes to the environment that will make life as we know it something of the past. The rotten system has to come down to make room for that which will respect our common earth. It makes absolutely no sense to pollute rivers, to invade indigenous communities, to cause massive oil spills and bulldoze the Amazon under socialism because the system's purpose isn't endless profit and growth. Another related subpoint is the proper maintenance of human interactions and communities. Unlike under capitalism, where there is a direct push to atomize individuals and communities to render them as single consumers for thorough manipulation and exploitation, under socialism, there's proper respect for community and collective existence. This doesn't mean the individual isn't important or doesn't exist. Socialism strives to respect the individual through maximizing their potential, for example, through education, as well as value the family and collective. In general, capitalism tends towards alienation in all its forms. Socialism, on the other hand, wants an end to alienation. To quote Patrick Devin, socialists want an end to alienation from one another, society, the economy, and non human nature. The capitalist mode of production, the transformation of all inputs used in the productive process into commodities, creates a state of generalized alienation. People are atomized and subject to an individualistic socioeconomic and cultural logic in which their underlying identity is reduced to that of worker and, in late stage capitalism, consumer, competing against other workers and consumers. The unfolding of this relentless logic in the era of neoliberalism has seriously weakened and eroded the defensive collective institutions of social solidarity that developed in earlier periods of capitalist development, and has promoted relationships amongst people characterized by mistrust and self seeking behavior. Far from increasing people's sense of well being, capitalism has created a sense of insecurity, powerlessness, and unhappiness, accompanied by increasingly self destructive and socially dysfunctional behavior. Lifetimes.
Alright, dude, that's rough. Okay, so there's a lot of points where he's kind of like still strawmanning. He's not really understanding what capitalism is. First of all, let's go to his first point that like they artificially make things shorter. That isn't, again, I don't know how that makes humanity worse in a way. Like that's just making more money. I don't really care that they're making things shorter that can last longer. Also, I can't really think of anything that they artificially do. Like I can't really think of anything honestly. Artificially make shorter? I don't know. I don't even think that's true. Like you could say they make artificial. Again, I don't think that's like it's a waste of human labor. It's not really true. Also, you're not making things for sale. You're making things to use. I think those actually be better if they're for sale because if the consumer, because like capitalism, the whole point of capitalism is for the consumer, right? To keep because you need the consumer to keep going. So if your product is ass, no one's gonna go back for your things. So, if just say that they're like, well, this is really good, but it lasts really short. Well, maybe I'll go somewhere else that's making it longer, like competition. Like, oh my gosh. Like, for example, if there's company A and company B, and company A makes phones that last for 5 years, and then company B makes phones that last for 7 years. Well, now in competition, company A is going to have to make things go like 7 years so they can meet up with the competition. Or did they make their product so good that it's worth it? See, that's the whole point. They're forgetting about competition. Now, let's go to the second part, environment. Well, here's the thing about the environment. You can see, one, the Earth isn't going to, like, explode because of capitalism. The Earth survived in the Industrial Revolution, a meteor, and many other horrible things. They can survive us, okay? Second of all, if you're just arguing for capitalism that is necessarily just pro economy, or not economy, pro environment, which has been had before. Another point I was gonna make is oil spills. We brought up oil spills. Oil spills is gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Okay. Okay, because imagine this. You are what Marx wanted was the entire world to be communist because you can't have a communist society that's only one country and the rest of the world is like other economic systems. They'll just invade because pretty much it has no state. Besides the point. Just say the entire world's communist. Well, how are you gonna travel oil from the Middle East to the United States? Well, you're gonna use oil tankers. Well, sometimes it's oil spills. That's not even a capitalist thing. Oil spills, right? So he's talking about the environment. He didn't really talk about labor. I think he brought up, I'm not sure, but I think he brought up like the capitalist societies use like, you know, they exploit slave labor. Well, you used to be pro-tariff. Well, you used to be pro-tariff again. You put high tariffs on countries like China, which is apparently a socialist country. They use, you know, they exploit human labor. Also, let's talk about socialist countries. How did the USSR, did the USSR exploit human people? I think they did. The gulags. 1 to 3% of the GDP every single year is because of the gulags. Every other communist nation, identified communist nation, every other socialist nation has used prison labor. Really exploiting your workers, aren't you? Oh my gosh. I forgot about, I just remembered that. Gulags. 1 to 3% of GDP every single year was gulags. They produce so much. What's the gulags? Common knowledge, dude. Anyways, makes no sense, right? That you're gonna be pro humanity and also communist. But also you'd be pro if you're worried about capitalists, using really like slave labor. Well, you would just be pro tariff because then they're forced to make stuff here and pay workers here, and also be anti-mass immigration, so they can't exploit workers in terms of pay. It's that easy. Or you just be a distributionist, right? Which is all small businesses. I don't think socialists should have a problem with small businesses. But let's get into this part. Economic democracy, essentially.
Our fourth point is economic democracy. With socialism, one of the fundamental aims is to reorganize the enterprise, where you spend 8 hours of your day along democratic lines. As it stands now, you work in an economic dictatorship. You do what you're told, whenever you're told, and you have absolutely no say in the running of your workplace or any other important decision, despite the fact that without you and others like you, the enterprise itself wouldn't exist. Instead, a small clique at the very top, usually the board of directors, controls the levers. Remember what I said at the beginning of the video? This is one of those instances of projection on capitalism's part. Under socialism, enterprises would be horizontally organized, where all workers have a say in how things are done, with proper voting and accounting for all. You yourself, along with your fellow employees, decide how to work, what to produce, at what rate, to which agencies, with what resources, all according to your relative specialities and according to scientific analysis and democratic consensus. Under capitalism, how can you say you truly live in a democracy when in the place you spend most of your waking hours, you can't question anything, let alone give your input? Related is that socialism eliminates capitalist exploitation through forcible surplus extraction and replaces it with work for oneself and work for society. Rather than working a few hours to meet your wage and the rest of the workday to produce profit for the capitalist, under socialism, you work under contract at your enterprise where you separate your work into the surplus produced to meet your needs and the surplus produced that goes into a common social fund that is used for the development and maintenance of society as a whole. Realize this is no tax. As under capitalism, 50% of the output you produce goes to the capitalist. And from the 50% that goes to you, the capitalist state also takes a cut, bringing it down to 40%, 30%, or even 20% in some countries. Our fifth point.
Alright, dude, this is rough. This is actually a rough video to listen to. Okay. So, democracy. Who loves democracy? Not me. I don't like democracy. Okay. The problem with democracy is, we gotta use Socrates here, right? You get to vote on what you want to do, how many hours you want to work. Okay, well, the first problem is, what if everyone decides just to work 1 hour a day? Okay. Problem 2, right? You vote on a motion, what you want to do, right? If there's a problem with democracy, is that everyone votes on a motion, right? They don't vote on what's actually good for society. That's why I don't like democracy, right? Now, an economic dictatorship will function better. It will function better. Objectively, it will function better. Because now you don't have people who have no idea about business, no idea about economics. They don't have a say. I'd rather have that. Because now, economy will function better. It will function better. Now, this could be a quick one, because, I mean, this is easy to debunk. I don't think economic democracy is a good thing. But let's look at the next thing he said. Right? Which he also said, I don't know, transgender, I'm just kidding. He also said the labor surplus value thing. Oh, gosh. Okay, so the problem with that is that I already said this earlier in the video. Well, you're not buying... Let's just talk about this pencil. This pencil got manufactured, right? You're gonna hear me... This is Milton Freeman, okay? Dude. Plastic. Whatever this thing is. Whatever that is. The lead, the eraser, whatever. Right? You didn't make the lead exactly. You didn't make the plastic exactly. You didn't make the eraser exactly. You bought the eraser. You bought the lead from wholesales. You bought all this from wholesales, and all you do is put it together. Wait, who bought it, though? Who bought the pencil? Well, the owner of this business bought the pencil. Wait. So, you have no say in the game because you didn't put any money to it. Now, I can understand if you put your money into this pencil, well, then you get a profit back. But you didn't put any money into this. All you did was build it, so you don't get no money. You don't get any profit. You don't get any say in what the business does because you don't have any skin in the game. You don't have any skin in the game. It's how it just makes no sense. Makes no sense. All right, so and even under communism, 50% of your labor surplus value, whatever it's called, is going to the community. So it makes no sense, right? Um. Anyways, you don't get. I just believe if you put the money in, you deserve to get the most of the profits and most of the value. Basic economics, basic just morals, I guess. That again, I hate the way they say the capitalist, the Jeff Bezos. Yeah. So, anyways, that's easy. That was actually pretty easy to debunk on that part. Let's see what else he's got. This is a long video.
The elimination of boom and bust cycles. An unsurprising and boring point, but socialism doesn't experience boom and bust cycles, and doesn't randomly crash every 5 to 7 years, like capitalism does. This is because socialism is carried out according to an economic plan with proper accounting, so the standard overproduction to destruction of excess pipeline that capitalism exhibits simply doesn't exist. That, and because production is done for use values rather than exchange values, and markets are suppressed. The very mechanism for boom and bust cycles isn't present. Point number 6.
That was awful. I mean, he didn't even make a good point. You gotta read some capitalism. I don't know if he's read any capitalism. You gotta read some capitalism, okay? I get it. I'm gonna read socialism, but you gotta read some capitalism, dude. Okay. A recession is necessary for an economy. If you make a mistake, well, a recession needs to happen. And the market always finds itself out again, right? The way to do this is, well, you have bad policymakers, so maybe democracy isn't a great thing, that everyone's voting on, like, emotion, what sounds the best, but you need to vote on what is the best, right? So maybe it's not voting on emotion, what sounds good in the short term, but what's better in the long term is better. So maybe slower growth is better for the economy because you won't go into recessions, right? Again, a recession is just a correction in the economy. Frederick Hayek, please read him. Capitalists, you gotta read some capitalists. They're needed in economies. They're needed, or else the economy won't function because there'll be a mistake. If you don't have a recession, the mistake's not get unhidden, and they'll keep making the mistake until the economy crumbles, right? Recessions are needed for the economy to function. You saw the Great Depression, and we got better. The 2008 financial crisis, we got better. The panic of 1921, we got better. You get better, you fix it, and now you don't have to go do that to recession again. It's like if you're learning baseball, you're learning how to play baseball, right? And your swing is awful, right? Well, you're gonna have to practice, and you're gonna make mistakes, and you get better from those mistakes. I mean, it's not that hard. And again, it just shows the problem with democracy, right? Like, I mean, this is more just like making my arguments against democracy, but or unlimited suffrage. The problem with that is just that people want to hear, 3, 4, 5% GDP growth per year, and the economy's booming, but it maybe just better have slower growth, so you won't go into a recession. But no one wants to hear that. So, yeah, it's basic economics and just basic democracy. That's the problem.
Maximum life standard for as many people as possible. Socialism, unlike capitalism, makes an active effort of fighting inequality and for providing the absolute vast majority of people with the bare necessities they need. I'm not talking only food and shelter, something the richest country on earth, the ever-grand USA, doesn't even do. I mean those things people need for a dignified existence. I mean developed education at all levels, high quality and plentiful healthcare, dignified employment and opportunities for creative expression, culture clubs, youth houses, free expansive public parks and beautiful environments. Things that make you happy to be alive.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Socialism allows for the creative
these are so surface level arguments.
Through these methods, and does so off the sweat of collective effort, unlike the European social democracies, which do so off the backs of brown and black bodies from imperial periphery countries. We produce enough food to meet the needs of billions more than actually exist, yet people still starve. Modern computing and the internet have made full and expansive education a possibility for everyone. Only 6% of the world's population has university degrees. Year by year, economies and workers get more and more efficient.
Alright, I understand his argument, dude. This is awful. Alright, dude, last part of the video, finally. We got through this fucking mess. Alright, so pretty much what happened here. Well, with capitalism, right? You want free housing? Well, we already have that in the United States. Dude, you have no reason to be homeless. Okay? The reason why people are homeless because they sympathize with the homeless so much. I'm like, most of the time they're homeless because they're on drugs and they actually want to be homeless. Because we got everything. For if you're homeless, if you're broke, the United States has everything for you. Everything. The United States has everything. Okay? Welfare, Medicare. If you're broke, if you're homeless, you can get Section 8 housing. You can go to a homeless shelter. You have churches. So that's already a not good argument. And even in a social democracy, that's even more. Now, second of all, he said when we have public stuff, shelter, parks. Well, you know how bad those things are going to be? Because name me one thing that's good that's government ran in the United States. You can't name me one thing. You know why? Because the government doesn't do their job good. Private market does stuff better. Right? Like for example, UPS versus USPS. If anyone ships with the post office, knows how bad the post office is. UPS is way more efficient. Right? Why? Because of the profit and loss. They're aiming for profit. And inequality, it's a really bad metric. Okay, sure, inequality, not a great thing. But I think, again, you just be pro-social democracy. You wouldn't be pro-communist because you still want private things. Public things are not good. They're never good. Okay, you can't, and my argument is just name one thing that's public and that's good in the United States. VA, awful. And I'm not even against, like, single-payer healthcare. Like, I'm pro-mix, right? But healthcare, like the VA sucks. Public transport sucks. Everything that's government ran sucks. Public shipping sucks. So yeah, it all sucks. So anyways, thank you guys for watching this long ass video. I'm gonna be going live in about 2 hours and have my show at 8:30, of course. Thank you guys, and God bless you all.